So what this exercise also in our module is looking at how we've talked about in the context of earthquakes, something happens, and in some countries that are stable, that have good support structures, you go out of your apartment building for a little while, and we get it stabilized, we get it certified that it's not going to crack and fall down, you kind of go back. In areas where either the magnitude of the destruction is just so huge, or like the Turkey or like the Myanmar example, where the construction itself is maybe not super robust, so the onset of the disaster happens, and you can't go back. In many cases, those folks will be displaced. They can be, again, displaced internally inside the country, or unfortunately, they can also be displaced to a different area. The general term for anybody that happens to, because of a climate-related disaster, now earthquakes aren't necessarily a climate-related disaster, but many of our other ones do have a climate component. Wildfires, floods, heat wave, tropical storm, cyclone, all that kind of stuff. And so for those things, when that happens, the term that we've come to use is climate refugees. So it's a form of being a refugee. Again, you could be a refugee in your own country. You could be an international refugee. But we use the term climate refugees specifically for folks that are being displaced because of these issues. And so the exercises today, if you guys just to find 12 new stories, they all have to be after 2022, so they have to be in the last couple years. And so I have the instructions here about searching for climate refugees and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so here's my list, and so I have it all set up for you guys, and so you have your targets. So the first thing that I need you guys to do is to find those stories, and again, they could be any story as long as it's a news story, right? It could be from any source or what have you. But here's the hitch: it can't be the same story that somebody else grabbed. So when you find it, that's good, fill them out. But before you wrap up the assignment, go double check and make sure nobody else has the same story that you did, right? Because we want to have a unique data set. And then here's, so once you do that, that's cool. And then you're going to tell me the publication, the date, etc. And then I want you guys to fill in these couple questions over here to the right. So the first one is, what kind of disaster was the initial thing? There might have been a few disasters, but what was the initial one? Was it a wildfire? Was it a hurricane? What? So you're going to tell me what that thing was. The area where they were originally impacted. So the origin of the community was displaced. Where did they come from? And as much detail as you can. So if they have a city name, put the city name. If they have the region, put the region. If they have the state, put the state. But as much specificity as you can get from the story. And then the same thing as to where they ended up, or at least when the reporter writes the story, where are they at that point of being discussed in the story. And then just like the geographic area where they came from into, this would be the ecosystem, the ecological community from which. So they came from a coastal strand, they came from a coastal wetland, they came from a forest, they came from a whatever type of area. And then based on where they ended up in the story, was it inside the same country where they began their moving? Or was it a country outside of their home country? And then is the story portraying this as, I have them in quotes, voluntary, but so is it the kind of thing where there was a disaster, and this disaster right now destroyed my home, I have nowhere to sleep, it's raining, I got to go somewhere, right? So that would be an example of the forced one, right? That I can't stay in my home. The other flavor you might encounter is this disaster happened, and yeah, I kind of repaired my house. It's maybe not perfect, but I kind of repaired it. But it's like, you know what? This is like the 5th time we've had to bail out my house, and it's just, we're done with it. So theoretically, we could stay there, right? It wasn't there, we didn't, there was still a well or there was still a farm field or whatever, but it's just like we've decided that, yeah, we can maybe recover from this, but we see the writing on the wall, and it's just not gonna work out for us on the long term here. So I would call that one quote unquote voluntary, right? So one is they have to run right now to survive, and the other one is like, well, I don't have to run this second, but I've decided that it's time for us to go.